everyone, and welcome to another episode of Annie Talks, where we bring to you interesting stories about interesting people that you want to know about. I'm your host, Annie Rivera. Thank you for tuning in, and to those who have already subscribed. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what you hear, and if so, I personally invite you to subscribe. Annie Talks is brought to you by Daily Gadgets and More. Daily Gadgets and More is proud and committed to offering the largest variety of high-quality products at the lowest prices and the best customer service. Find us on Instagram or visit dailygadgetsandmore.com. That's dailygadgetsandmore.com. Hey guys, this is the 50th episode of Annie Talks, and I couldn't be happier. When I first started this podcast, I had no idea what it was going to consist of, or how often I was going to get guests on this show, or how often I would post. I have had the honor of speaking with so many wonderful guests, those who have shared their talents, their stories of triumph and sorrow, their life goals, business tips, and tricks. What a beautiful journey this has been, and thank you all so much for sticking by this podcast and coming along for the ride. I cannot thank you enough. Now, switching gears, in this episode, my guest, Roni Lambrecht, shares a story about losing her only son, Dalton, in an ATV accident. He was only 15 at the time. Together with her husband, John, Roni's world would change forever. It was through their grieving process that led to Roni to write 2 books. Parenting at Your Best, Powerful Reflections and Straightforward Tips for Becoming a Mindful Parent, and A Parent's Guide for Journaling to Their Child, Simple Strategies for Writing Heartfelt Love Letters to Your Child. Roni says Parenting at Your Best, which was named the Gold Mom's Choice Award, was written from a completely different perspective of any other parenting book ever written before, from that of a mother looking back over her life as a parent after loss, sharing the things we did right and the regrets that often sneak up on us. Roni, a firm believer of paying it forward, shares a heartfelt story about a random act of kindness. Here now is my conversation with Roni Lambrecht. Hi, Roni. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really, truly appreciate it.
Oh, Annie, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. Why don't you kind of give us a sense of your background and your hometown and all that leading up to who you are today?
Okay. Well, let's see here. Born in Rapid City, born in California, actually, and then moved back to Rapid City, South Dakota when I was 2 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and lived there till I was 8, and then my family moved to Littleton, Colorado, and that's where I really, grew up, did high school, college, all that kind of fun stuff, and started my career, and now we live in Castle Rock, Colorado. We've been here 17 years, so that's just south of downtown Denver. Basically, we're about 20 minutes south of downtown Denver.
So you never even got to really feel the California sun and get live the California life, huh?
No, 2 weeks there, and my parents were like, "We're going back home."
Oh, well, albeit it was, a wonderful 2 weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was itty bitty, so I don't even know.
Yeah, very true. So, you have a story that I would love for you to share with our listeners, and if you could share the story. I'm not going to say too much, but I'd love for you to be able to kind of tell the story and then share how all of that made you feel and about the grieving process that you went through.
Okay, absolutely.
About
almost 5 years ago, 4 years, 9 months, and 2 weeks ago, we lost our only child in an ATV accident, actually in California at the Glamis Sand Dunes. We had gone there actually to ride our four-wheelers and camp for the week of between Christmas and and New Year's
Okay.
in 2013. Dalton was hit head-on by a sandrail, and he was killed instantly. People always ask what a sandrail is, and the way that we explain it is it's like a really big dune buggy. It's about 6 times the weight of his four-wheeler. And they think that those boys were going about 60 miles an hour, and they think that Dalton was going somewhere between 15 and 30. But, you can't really tell because nobody really knows. Anyway, but he was killed instantly, and so now we've just had to move forward with our lives without him, and into the emptiness and the darkness of being parents without a child. Anyway.
So I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all that you've had to go through. Could you tell us how old Dalton was?
Absolutely. He was 15 years and 8 months.
And do you know how old the boys were that were on the other vehicle?
Yeah, they were 19 and 21.
Now, is there a legal age limit for riding any of these vehicles, the ATV and the sand? What was it called? The
sandrail? Yeah, I don't know about the sandrails. And then the ATVs, the stickers on them say age 16, but there's no actual laws that say how old you have to be. Dalton's actually been riding. We started him riding when he was 7 weeks old. He was in a pouch on my belly, and he was attached to me in 6 different places. And so I literally, he's been riding his entire life, and he was an expert. He was definitely an expert rider.
Wow. And then, so you said that he, it was instant. Can you tell us, I know it's probably such a very, I hate for you to have to relive all this over again, but I think, our listeners could benefit from listening to how you dealt with some of these emotions. I'm sure there's, a whole grieving process that you had to go through. Can you share some of those with us?
Absolutely. The first thing I would tell you is that there was a book written about the 5 stages of grief, and it was written from a different perspective, and it's completely incorrect and wrong. There are not 5 stages of grief. There are about millions of stages of grief, I think.
Yeah.
And you're in many, many at one time. There's not like one day you're angry and one day you've accepted it and that kind of a thing. It's there are many stages of grief, and you're in all of them. More than likely you're in many of those stages all at once. So anyway, I think and the other thing is that grief is something that we'll go through for the rest of our lives. It's now this is something that we have to live with every day forever, until we get to see him again someday, hopefully. So it's not like we've moved through it. It's not over with. It's something we deal with every day. And certainly there are better moments than others, but we are still very moment to moment. One of the best things I read about it actually is grief actually feels like you're in an ocean and you're riding along and things are going a little bit, just fine. And then a huge wave comes up and it sucks you under the water and it twists you around and holds you under the water and you can't breathe. And I would tell you that is one of the most accurate descriptions of grief that I've heard. And I know like our first couple years, we were pretty numb. And they do say like your first 2 years that you're extremely numb, and that your second year is definitely one of the hardest years to get through because you're coming out of the numb and you're really realizing that this is true. This is really my life now. I really have to live with this. And I think that I would say that depression is ongoing. The PTSD is, it is definitely post-traumatic stress every day, and going through just all the emotions and the daily things, the daily triggers that you walk into, and you don't realize when you're going somewhere, or when you meet someone, or that someone's going to say something, or you're going to hear a song on the radio, or see a scene on TV, or watch something in a movie, read something in a book. There's always triggers, and you never ever know what those triggers will be, unless you've experienced them at least once. I know for me, grocery shopping is very, very, very difficult for me. And I know that a lot of people that go through grief suffer with grocery shopping. First of all, I think because it in and of itself is a very nurturing thing. You're going to the grocery store to buy food for your family, to feed your family, that kind of a thing. In my case, Dalton and I did the grocery shopping together. And he loved to cook eggs. That was one. He loved, like, Saturday mornings, he loved to cook us breakfast, and he loved to cook eggs. And I think mainly because I suck at cooking eggs, and he wanted to prove to me that he was way better at cooking eggs than me. But yeah, he would make cinnamon rolls and eggs and bacon and, all kinds of stuff on Saturday mornings. And he would always want to pick out the eggs. And so when we were at the grocery store, that was something that he always did, was he picked out the eggs. And so for me to go stand in an egg aisle today to pick out eggs, it sounds so incredibly stupid, but I typically end up on the floor bawling my eyes out, and I can't move for quite a while.
Goodness.
So
No.
I don't do it anymore. We have groceries delivered now. Walmart delivery is wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, I like what, or I don't like, but you had mentioned about triggers. You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, it could be any given moment. I mean, I lost my father 2 years ago to cancer. And sometimes, thank you. And sometimes I would talk about a trigger moment. My father was always the kind of person that told me, make sure you take care of your car, follow the instructions, get your oil changed when you're supposed to, look at the sticker whenever you go to look at your sticker to make sure you're, within your miles or things like that. So I was having issues with my car. I was having transmission issues, and I was, back and forth to the dealer, and, dealing with it, and, having to tell them, I promise you there's something going on with my car, and having to, tell that story to them over and over again. I was in such a despair because, I was without a car, and I couldn't get around. And then they were thinking about, spending hundreds of dollars on car payment or car repairs that I knew I didn't have, but I was so sure there was something wrong with my car that I picked up the phone and I started to dial my dad.
Oh, yes.
And amazing was it rang and rang and rang, and I kept saying, God, that's not like him to not answer the phone. And then within a minute, within seconds, I fell to the ground like you. I just fell to the ground, and I thought, I can't ever talk to him.
Yes.
About
and it's
my
always
car.
when you feel like you need him the most, it's just such a struggle.
It
Absolutely.
really is. I'm so sorry that you went through all of this, and I know, but you have those loving memories of him, as about about making eggs and
exactly. We have amazing memories of him. Yes, you're right.
And I was looking through your website, let me just go to the right website here. I was looking at the doitfordalton.com website.
Yeah.
The PayItForward. He's definitely your angel. Do you feel like he's around you? Do you feel like moments, where things happen and you say, oh, Dalton,
yes.
I know you're here.
Absolutely. Yeah, he leaves us dimes in strange places. And actually the other day I was in a park sitting with a friend having lunch, and a dragonfly came and sat on my arm. And Dalton didn't like to take pictures at all. He didn't like to be in pictures. And my girlfriend said, oh my gosh, that's got to be Dalton. I'm going to go get my phone and take a picture. And the second she said take a picture, it flew away. And then when she put her phone away, it came back and sat on my arm again. And then she got her phone out to take a picture, and then he flew away again. And then she put her phone away and he came back. So it was like, that's got to be Dalton. He's just coming to say hi today. Yeah, just cool things that happen. One of my clocks upstairs quit right at the exact time that he said goodbye to me the morning of his accident. And but the clock actually still is clicking, like it's working, but it still stopped at 11:17 a.m. and it keeps clicking, so it's not the batteries. Anyway, but that's when he said goodbye to me. And right now we're actually in the midst of trying to sell our house, and I've been really struggling with this, selling the house. And my husband just feels like we need a change right now, and that we need to do something different. And this house, when we built it, you know, Dalton's in every part of this. He was here when we built it. His hands are in the concrete, you know, just he's in every part of this house. And to think that we would leave it because we thought we would be here forever, you know, have grandbabies here and all that. And now we don't have that anymore. And my husband feels like it's a constant reminder that we will never have grandchildren, and you know, never have family events here and that kind of a thing. So he feels like we need to start fresh and do something different. And so, yeah, just this whole selling the house thing has just been such a tough thing. But when the clock struck 11:17 and it stayed there, and it's been that way for months now, because I refused to change it. But I felt like that was Dalton's sign that it's okay to say goodbye to the house, because that's the exact same time that he said goodbye to me. So,
yeah, definitely. I feel he's looking over you and communicating with you, and yeah, I'm gonna cry right now.
Oh. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You had said something about dimes. Can you talk about that? What was the significance of dimes?
You know, I don't know, but if you Google dimes from heaven, there's like a whole thing. Like, people do it all the time. And it's really interesting. It used to be, they say pennies from heaven, and it's a joke on when you Google it, there's like, it's a joke that inflation made it go to dimes or something like that. But it's really weird, because at the same time that we lost Dalton, actually John's brother had lived with us for about 1.5 years, and he had just moved from our house to Texas. And so while he lived with us, him and Dalton were extremely close. And when he found out about Dalton's accident, he actually OD'd on heroin, and we lost him the same week as we lost Dalton. And so it's just weird things have happened, but we are sure that Dalton sends us dimes and that Bill sends us nickels. And it's just weird, like, Bill worked for my husband, for John, doing remodeling, and my husband is really a clean freak, and so he'll clean the job site up and make it perfect every night before he leaves to come home, so that the homeowner doesn't have to deal with sawdust or anything like that. And he had one night done all of his cleanup, and everything was spick and span and spotless, and you could eat off the floor probably, and turned around and there was a nickel right where he had just vacuumed.
Wow.
Yeah, so he feels like that's Bill, saying hi to him, because they work together. And then Dalton leaves us dimes in just strange places, like in my office. I've never had change in my office. There's just no need for coins to be in my office. And in my office, I had pulled out the phone bill actually for his phone, because he had paid me 2 months for his phone before we left on our trip. And so that's how long I left his phone on. And I went to pull out that bill, and I lifted the piece of paper up, and there were 2 dimes underneath it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it just weird things like that, like where they just kind of show up out of the blue. And it's usually, right when we're really, really, really struggling and we need a sign, and they'll show up. So, yeah, and it's just being open to that. And a million people that are skeptics would say, oh, gosh, you could have found a dime anywhere. And you know what? We could have. But if I want to believe that it's my son leaving me a message, then I'm going to believe it. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
We feel the same way. You know, I'm not really sure the significance of butterflies, but when we go to visit my father, you know, at his site, there's always a butterfly. You
Oh,
know,
then that's him.
yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
always. And then sometimes we'll be, you know, maybe in the garden of my mother's, you know, she lives in a active senior living home. Sometimes we'll be in the garden there. Of course, you'd think there would be like a million butterflies, but there's always a butterfly, my mom says, when she walks to her car, always. So,
Aw.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
things like that. So we know that, you know, that my father's looking after her and making sure she's okay. And so, you know, I'm a strong believer in those little signs.
Absolutely. And again, you have to kind of really make a head-on decision on that kind of stuff, that you're going to believe what makes you feel better,
Right.
to help you get through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in your bio, I'm going to read something that I wrote, that I read in a bio, or something that I think you sent over to me. You said that we've really taken notice of families not paying attention to each other, either distracted by activities, books, or electronics, cell phones, yet spending lots of money going out to dinner or traveling to wonderful places only to find themselves still connected to everyone other than their children. Tell us about that realization about how people are connected to so many things, vices, devices, social media, and other time distractors. What signs we can watch for to do our own self-assessing, and more importantly, how we can all change our mindsets.
Wow, that's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so
It's
sorry.
okay.
I just thought it was just a beautiful analogy of, you know, how our lives are so busy with other things that
Yeah.
and then it happens to me too. We'll be all sitting at dinner, and this is, you know, I think we're all kind of guilty of this. We'll be sitting at dinner. I'll be with my kids, and we're all in our phones.
Yes. And we've got to put our phones away.
Yeah.
During dinner and those kind of things. The way this really all started for me was John and I had been, you know, we eat out a lot now because, you know, cooking for 2 people is not always easy, and I don't know how to cook for 2 people. I still always cook for 3 people, and the dog gets Dalton's portion. I cannot cook for 2 people. But anyway, so we eat out quite a bit, and probably 2 times a week or something we eat out. And
right.
Anyway, and we would notice that whole entire families were on their phones and stuff, and you just want to like wring their necks and say, hey, they could be gone tomorrow, you know.
Yeah.
But I had something happen, and on Wednesday nights we typically go get wings at this little restaurant right up the street from us, and we get them and bring them home and watch TV or whatever, hang out together. And I went to get wings, and I had called ahead of time, and the girl there is Marie. We talk to her every week, so we're good buddies. And I called her and, you know, told her what our order was or whatever, and she said, okay, I'll see you in 20 minutes. And so in 20 minutes I went up and walked in the door, and she came out to the counter, and she's like, oh my gosh, Roni, I'm so sorry. I haven't even started your order yet. We got this huge rush. A whole baseball team came in, and anyway, your order's not ready. And so is there any way you could wait for 20 minutes and I'll get them on right now? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll just kind of stand back. And she said, okay. So I just kind of stood back by the door, because it's a really small place. It's not like there's a lot of room to stand.
Right.
Anyway, I just stood back by the door, and I looked. We just, you know, how you people watch.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to, but you know, you just do. But this whole family was sitting at a table, and every single one of them, from the moment I got there, I had noticed them. And to 21 minutes later, because I was watching my phone, you know, watching the time on my phone, 21 minutes later, when my wings were ready and Marie called me up, they were still on their phones. So they had been eating wings and with one hand on their phones, reading their phones, and then eating their wings with the other hand, and
not talking to each other.
And in 21 minutes, these people never said one single word to each other.
Wow.
And by the time I got up to the counter, I was a basket case. I was bawling my eyes out. I couldn't talk. I was just a blubbering mess. And I'm sure everybody at this restaurant is thinking, who is this psycho? But I was just as I couldn't talk. I was trying to talk to this Marie behind the counter, and because she's like, Roni, what's wrong? Oh my God, what happened? And anyway, and when I finally got myself together, it took quite a while, and I finally got myself together, and I'm like, that family over there has been on their phones the whole entire time I've been here, and I would do anything to have just a couple minutes with Dalton, much less have a whole entire dinner. And they just wasted all this time. Like, what if their child dies tomorrow morning and they don't have that time anymore? It was just the most horrible experience. And I was just such a basket case.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But anyway, with this, we had started this PayItForward program with these little business cards, and she has them setting on her counter there. So people will use them all the time. But they're just these little cards with Dalton's picture on them, and they ask you to perform a random act of kindness, and then they ask you to take the card and hand it to the next person that you did the kindness for, and you ask them to, when they have the means and the time or whatever, if they could do something nice for someone else and then pay it forward. So like we have a domino effect of kindness. And so she had the cards sitting on her counter, and so she's like, what do you want me to do? Is there anything I could do to help? And I said, why don't we do this? Will you make a dessert, add it to my bill, and give me a piece of paper from your cash register there, and give me a pen, and I'm going to write them a letter. So I just wrote on this little tiny piece of calculator tape. I just wrote, we lost our son, and at that point it was like a year. I said, we just lost our son, and I have been watching you for almost 30 minutes, and none of you have been off your phones. You haven't said a word to each other, and I would do anything to be able to have dessert with my son. So please, if you would, put your phones down and eat this dessert together. I've given, she's giving you 4 spoons, blah, 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 so that you guys can just focus on dessert and being together. Basically that I would do anything to have that time back. Anyway, and since then, that was kind of the start of it. And since then, John and I do that nearly every single time we go out to dinner now, because there's always a family that's not communicating. And I'll tell you, the really sad part is that more times than not, it's the parents on their phones, and the kids are sitting there looking at them like, can somebody talk to me?
Oh, wow.
So, and now that I've told you that, you will notice this now when you go out to eat.
Of course. I mean, I already notice it now. I notice it now with my own family.
Yeah.
So,
and it's just so scary that our world is coming to this, and that we're being taken over by all of this.
And were you able to get some feedback from Marie as to, when she delivered the pie to them or the dessert to them? Did she give you feedback as to, were they surprised? Were they?
Actually, the next week when I went in, because I told her she had to wait till I left.
Right.
But yeah, the next week when I went in, she said that the mom was actually very angry.
What?
Yeah, that the mom was very angry that I had watched them, and that I had basically told her that she was doing something wrong, because she was.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so that Marie said she was really upset, and she said that she would never come back there to eat again because she was upset that I had sat there and watched her, I guess.
But it's not even in the message she was paying attention to. She was
exactly.
It was, the fact that she felt like she was being
interrogated, or
yeah,
and I didn't mean it that way at all. I just wanted to, just have her pay attention to her kids.
But I mean, you have a perfect message to, to listeners out there that, I mean, life could change instantaneously, tonight, tomorrow, in a minute. And yes, as a family, and as, as you gather with your loved ones, you should spend, valuable and meaningful time with each other. So, I mean, that's the message.
Exactly.
She clearly did
not get the message. And I'm hoping that, hopefully maybe she went home and, thought about it and then hopefully has changed her ways a bit. But It was just really sad. But again, John and I, we do that almost every time we go out to eat now.
Awesome.
And it's sad that you have to do that.
And then you have this also on the on your website, on the Do It for Dalton website, and it has I see Dalton's picture there. You have some text that it says "Pay it forward" in loving memory of Dalton. So this is your message to everyone, to basically for those that are listening. I invite you to visit doitfordalton.com. It's doitfordalton, DALTON.com, and visit the website and see, the message there. There's a beautiful picture there of Dalton, and then the Pay It Forward message, and then you can talk, and there's a way that you can reach out to Roni and her husband. You can click on the email link there and ask questions or get more information if you'd like. And I think that's a great way for each of us to, make some sort of small change in our world, especially, with the fact that we're so engulfed in our electronics, and it's kind of, like she says, like Roni says, it's kind of taking over our mindset and our lives. And it's great to be connected, but do you need to be connected that much?
Exactly. Yeah. Right? If you can't put your phone down for 20 minutes to have dinner with your family, there is an issue.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you also mentioned valuing the small moments within the daily chaos of your life versus always working toward the big things, events and vacations. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. One of the things when I go out and speak to parents is I try and communicate that of all of the things that we miss about Dalton, it's the little things. So it's not the trip that we took to Disney World. It's not the humongous vacations. It's the little tiny things, like doing laundry together, when we would make dinner together, when Dalton would make breakfast, all those little things, vacuuming. When he was itty bitty, he would like sit on top of the vacuum and I would vacuum him around the house and stuff. But just trying to take everyday moments that you've got with your kids and turning them into fun events, fun things. And it's when we look back on Dalton and our life with him, it is the small things that we remember. It really is, until I see a picture of us, in a, like at Disney World, I don't even think about those times, in all honesty. It's every morning when he came down the stairs when I was taking my vitamins, and he would give me the most awesome hug every single morning. And it's the night, when we would go up and in his bed, the three of us would cuddle every single night. When he got older, it's not called cuddling anymore, it's called hanging out. But every single night, all three of us would go in Dalton's bed and we would cuddle and we would talk about our highs and lows for the day. And so Dalton would do his highs and lows, and then John would do his and I would do mine. And we would just consistently be sharing our day and that kind of a thing. And then if a problem came up, when you're talking about your low and what are you struggling with today or whatever, and then we could all give each other advice and that kind of a thing. And one of the coolest things about that, I think, was that we were teaching our kid that the entire world does not revolve around him, and that there is life outside of him. For all of us, there's life. He has a life outside of us. We have a life outside of him. But the other thing was, you could come up with something that you'd been fighting with all day long in your head. How am I going to do this? How am I going to make this work? And you tell it to a kid, and he goes, oh, why don't you do this? And it's like, I have been struggling with this freaking thing all day long, and I cannot believe you just came up with that. That's got to be too simple,
Seriously. Out of the mouth of babes. Right?
Exactly. But then how it would be so cool how you could just come back, and a couple days later, and I could say, you would not believe, Deej, I used what you told me, this situation, and what you said, what you told me to do it fixed it. And what that told him, in no words did that tell him, that I trusted him, that I had confidence in him, that I believed in him. I didn't even have to say those words. What I said to him was, what you told me actually worked. And so I used it. And because of that, he then had confidence that he could talk to adults. He had confidence that oftentimes he has a good idea and he should speak up, and it let him know that he's a valuable contributor to this family. So I think, just as parents in general, I think that we need to step back and just realize that, are we going to go take a trip to Hawaii? And that's a big deal because it costs a lot of money, right?
Right.
But in all reality, do our kids really give a crap about going to Hawaii? Probably not. I mean, let's be serious. Would they rather that you sat down on the floor with them and played Legos, or, got out and went for a bike ride together, or went to the park together, or just sat together and maybe you write a story together, or you sort pictures together and make a collage, but just finding little everyday things that you can do just right here in your house, in your own backyard, that don't take any money at all. But they take time. And for all of us, you and I, professional women, and the dads too, professional fathers, and hardworking families, we feel like, God, we got to be out making the money. It costs so much to live these days, and we've got to put a roof over our head, and we have to, pay for food and all that kind of stuff. And it's very difficult to do that these days because everything is so expensive and everybody's so overwhelmed trying to make that happen, that in the process we're forgetting that, we brought these little human beings into the world, and they could be brand new, they could be 25 years old, they could be 50 years old, but we brought these people into this world, and we need to be willing to share with them our most valuable asset, and that is our time.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. You touched on a very good point there, in that we're always so busy. Always. I mean, sometimes I think, do I really need to put every single thing down on my calendar, and a lot, so much time for this and that? I mean, I had a friend once tell me that, you have to calendarize everything, even from the minute you wake up to this. And I'm like, do I really need to be that structured every single day? Because what if there's, what if my kids call on me and need me for any, whatever, then I want to be available for them.
Exactly.
I mean, or I hear so many different entrepreneurs and different professional people say, you have to allot some devotional time and some meditation time to your day to start, to start your day. So why not devote that same amount of time to your children, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I agree wholeheartedly. You're right. I mean, even if it's just, the other day I told my daughter, let's go out for a walk. Let's go take the dog for a walk. And sure enough, we went, and it was just a simple walk. It was 10, 15 minutes around the block. And,
but I bet you learned more in that 15 minutes about your daughter than you have in a year of conversations.
Yeah, you're right. It was a wonderful
undivided attention.
And it was, time for her to be able to kind of, reach out to me, and, and you always want them to feel that it's that they can come to you, like you said, with confidence. So if they can come to you with confidence, you're right, they can step out into the world and be confident in all that they do. And talking with adults, or talking with their peers or their colleagues or their professors or whatnot, it's having that confidence. So your time, your valuable time, is empowering them to be good citizens, and to have a place in this world. So you're absolutely 100% right. I love that. And it just kind of, poked me a little bit right now, thinking, okay, Annie, get going, spend more time with your kids. And funny, because as we were talking, I was telling you this earlier, my kids were texting me. Yeah, we're all connected, but they're all texting me, what are you doing today? What are you doing today? What are you doing today? So, so somebody's reaching out to us and saying, let's do something. So, after we get off this call, I'm definitely going to start, calling them and say, what is everybody doing? I want to meet you.
Absolutely.
It's such a wonderful, our children do want and crave your time. So you're absolutely 100% correct. And I love that you said that. And I'm hoping that all our listeners will start to, do some self-evaluating and look at your own lives and see, are you spending the time with your children? Are you spending the quality and valuable time? The same amount of time and same amount of effort and energy that you spend on work is 100 times more important to be that towards your children and your family.
Exactly. And because we spend so much time at work, I mean, in a perfect world, we only spend 8 hours a day on work. I don't know about you, but in my world, it's about 16 hours a day, it seems like.
Seriously.
But on an average day, it's really about 12 hours a day that I'm, spent on work. And then you think, okay, well, and then you have to have time to sleep and to eat and to do, exercise, meditate, whatever else you do. But where in that do we take the time to really to put our kids in that time frame? And we do need to schedule time for our kids and make sure that we're there for them when they need us.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. We'll be right back after this short message from one of our sponsors. ComfoTherm thermal wraps are designed to help relieve the pain and swelling in and around the jaw, especially after wisdom teeth extractions. For more information, visit comfotherm.com. That's comfotherm.com. Hey there, Annie Rivera here. Thanks for tuning in to Annie Talks. Be sure to tell your friends about subscribing to the podcast, and don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Doing so helps out with the algorithm and helps others to find this podcast too. I also invite you to like my Annie Talks Facebook page. There you'll find other news, information, upcoming events, and all sorts of things. Stay in the know with Annie Talks. I also invite you to join the Annie Talks Community Facebook group, where we carry the conversation from the podcast episode to the Facebook group. Ask questions about the episode, about a guest, about the locations, you name it. Ask away. This forum is for you. See you on the Annie Talks Community Facebook group. I love what you did with Dalton. You every night you would get in his room and cuddle and spend that time. So it's something that that was a staple and something stable in his life. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I really
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's only really one thing I did right. No, I'm kidding.
No.
One thing I did right as a parent.
No, you let him make eggs for you.
That's right. I look back on things and, when we lost him, the whole book came about actually from my husband saying, I have so many regrets and I really want to help other parents who are still lucky enough to have their kids. I really want to help them.
Talk about that. Talk about your books. Talk about the Parenting at Your Best book. And then you have another book called A Parent's Guide for Journaling for Their Children. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So they came about because of my husband and his, him being worried that another parent might, lose their child someday and then have the same regrets that he does. And for him, it was, it's goofy kind of things. And I'm sure you went through this with your dad too. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have said this. Did he know that I loved him? Did he, all these kind of things. And for John, this is the goofiest thing, but years and years and years ago, when Dalton was very little, we went one day to the store and we bought a bat and a glove and a baseball.
Yay.
And came home, brought it home, and because him and John had talked about doing that too, playing baseball in the yard or whatever. And it got put on the shelf and literally it never ever got touched. And so when we got home after we had lost Dalton, then John was in the garage doing whatever he does in the garage and noticed that baseball and that bat and that glove were sitting there, and he was just devastated that we never played baseball. And I said, you know what, babe? You got to stop and look at everything else that you did do. because you taught him how to ride four-wheelers, you taught him how to rebuild the engines, you taught him how to change the tires and the spark plugs and change the oil and all the things that you have to do to keep your four-wheeler alive, basically, and make it, keep it working and that kind of a thing. And, you taught him how to do stuff with cars, and you taught him how to do all these other things. And so all the things that we did together, camping and riding and all those things, those were the things that Dalton wanted to do. In all honesty, if Dalton wanted to play baseball, he would have come out and picked it up and said, "Hey, Dad, let's go play." But he didn't, because he liked to do these other things with you. And then John said, "Well, but every dad in the whole world plays baseball with their kid." And I said, "Yeah, babe, but you didn't. And the reason that you didn't is because Dalton didn't want to. You did the other things that Dalton did want to do." And so as parents, I think oftentimes we look at things, and I remember doing this every single day when Dalton was alive. I remember kicking myself every day saying, "God, Roni, why did you say that? Or why did you do that? Or why don't you take the time to do this with him?" Or, and I would always be beating myself up. "God, I could be a much better mom. I could do much better at this." And it's that little interior voice that's always talking us down. But then when we lost him, that stuff, regret, comes in and it eats you alive.
Yeah.
And so John was really struggling with that. And then I had done quite a few posts on Facebook, like blogs or whatever, because, I would hear the same question from multiple people multiple times. And so I thought, you know what, instead of me answering this question to 200 separate people because they're interested in how John and I are doing now after losing Dalton, I'm just going to put it out on Facebook, and then everybody can read it there.
Right.
And a lot of times I would write things about spending time with your kids, making the better decisions with your time, the things that we had regrets about, that kind of a thing. And people would come back with comments like, "You need to put this in a book. You need to teach this to other parents. You need to, you got what you said made me." One of my high school buddies said, "I actually haven't spoken to my son in 3 years because he told me he was gay.
Right.
And because of what you wrote today, I've called my son and we are going to go out to dinner." And anyway, and that's been many years ago. And now I see on Facebook I see pictures of them together all the time. And I think, you know what? It's because of something I wrote that got him to realize that who cares what someone's sexuality is? Who cares what color they are?
Yeah.
Who cares, what they do for a living? Whatever. Who cares? Just, if you're going to have a kid, if you're going to have someone in your life, be it your kids or anybody, your spouse, your kids, your friends, you know what? You need to care about them. You need to love them. You need to let them know that you love them. You need to be there for them. And who cares what their other choices are in their life? Because if something happened today and they were gone, you would regret that you didn't let them know tomorrow. So
that's beautiful. It's super beautiful. You have no idea that, behind the scenes here, I was crying. It was all the, no, I think I needed to. It was because it resonates with me, and I'm sure it's resonating with, some of our listeners, all of our listeners, or some people. So, your messages are very clear. And I think that this one of the book now, which one is it? Is it the Parenting at Your Best? Powerful Reflections and Straightforward Tips for Becoming a Mindful Parent? Is that the one? Or there's another book called A Parent's Guide for Journaling to Their Child, Simple Strategies for Writing Heartfelt Love Letters to Your Child. Where can we get these books, and how can we start reading them?
You can get them right on my website at parentingatyourBestWithoutRegrets.com. And you can also get them on Amazon. If you get them off my website, I'll, not like it's a big deal, but I'll autograph them for you or whatever, or send them wherever you want me to send them, or put a note in there for you,
awesome,
for whoever you're going to give it to, or that kind of a thing. But so they're, again, on my website, parentingatyourBestWithoutRegrets.com, and they're also on Amazon.
Awesome. And I will have all that information in the show notes below. So everybody that are interested in getting some of these books, you can do so on this website. And it it was also the Mom's Choice Award, and you were a gold recipient of that, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So she's, she definitely has some great nuggets there for all of you, all the listeners. So I'm so glad that you shared that with all of us. Now, for our parting words of wisdom for our listeners, what can you share with them? What can they take away from this conversation?
I would just tell you that just in general, if you're going to take the time to be somewhere, to do something, be there and do it. Put your phone away, pay attention, and be there. Just like you and I talking today, we can be right here focused on each other. And no matter who you're meeting with, whether you're having time with your kids, eating dinner or making dinner, or, doing whatever you do with your kids, or you're at work, or you're meeting a colleague, or you're doing a one-to-one with, to meet a new person for business or that kind of a thing, just make sure that you put your phone away and you let that person know that they are your number one priority right this moment. And I just think it's so important in this world that we maybe we stop talking and we listen more. What do they say? That there's a reason we have one mouth and two ears.
Right.
But yeah, get to know people and love the people around you and wish the best for everyone around you. And I hope that people do that for you in return. It's just, we've got to do something to make this world a better place. And I think a lot of it's going to start at home with the way that we treat our kids and the importance that we give to them, and then letting them get out in the world and making sure that they're good, responsible, beautiful, loving human beings. And they got that from home. So,
yes, yeah. Agreed. Where can we follow you? What social media channels, websites can we follow you?
Oh, let's see. I was just on my regular website, and the Parenting at Your Best Without Regrets. And then also I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. I have signed up for Pinterest. I don't do a whole heck of a lot there.
Yeah, I think so. Me too.
And the Twitter thing, I don't really know how to use Twitter yet. I haven't really done anything there, but every now and then I'll, kind of toss something between all the social media sites. But
no problem. So yeah. I will have all of her social media, all the ones that she has. I'll have that on the show or in the show notes below as well. So be sure to check it out. And also don't forget to go to the doitfordalton.com website, as well as her parenting at your best without regrets.com, where you can see, get a link to her books and get purchase copies of her books. Roni, I thank you so much. This was a lovely conversation, and you really touched my heart a lot.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy that we had this wonderful time, and I got to know Roni. And that's the name of my brother, by the way.
Cool.
Although it's spelled Ronnie, but still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That name's always been very special to me. So you have a very special place in my heart as well. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And I wish you all the wonderful best in the world, and the success in your home decision. So whether you decide to sell it or, whatever you do there, that I'm praying for the best for you in that decision making. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart with us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Go spend the day with your kids now.
I will. Well, that's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Annie Talks and learning about Roni Lambrecht. I hope you will all join in the random act of kindness movement and paying it forward in honor of your own loved ones, the way that Roni has done and continues to do on the regular for her son, Dalton. For more information, visit doitfordalton.com or parentingatyourbestwithoutregrets.com. You can buy Roni's book directly from Amazon.com or by visiting parentingatyourbestwithoutregrets.com. Don't forget to follow Roni on social media. I will have all her links in the show notes below, so be sure to check them out. Now, before signing off, If you aren't already subscribed to my podcast, I invite you to hit subscribe and be notified anytime we upload a new episode. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you could all please rate and review my podcast, please leave a comment or two. It would really help me out and it would help others to find this podcast. And lastly, you can follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. I will also have all the links to my social media below in the show notes. Thank you all so much for tuning in and keep listening to Annie Talks.
Hi, I'm Roni Lambrecht. I'm the author of Parenting at Your Best, Powerful Reflections and Straightforward Tips for Becoming a Mindful Parent. And you are listening to Annie Talks.